Well, hello there, and welcome to day 135 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And as we draw to the end of the week of recommendations from my lovely fiancée slash producer Helen, we are going to take a trip to a rather French weekend of watching. Two very different approaches to or representations of French culture, but we're starting with the 2000s romantic drama classic, Chocolat. And it's interesting, I suppose, to see, again, because there was a certain theme around this week, it was interesting to see parallels and to potentially bring together different themes and ideas based on this week's selection. I suppose the one that came to mind from this that I suppose I tie or relate to some of the previous is that the representation of gender and I suppose on some degree revolution in this film is probably its most prominent theme, but where something like, well, my direct comparison was with Dirty Dancing, which is very much about spoken revolution and you know the young overtaking the ideas of the previous decade and you know, like I say, revolutionizing the way people look at culture and gender and gender dynamics. This is much quieter. This is the quiet revolution, which is quite funny, really, being a film set in France. The idea of the quiet revolution that all our lead character, played by Juliette Binoche, does is just move into a town, set up a chocolate shop, and that's it. And yet, that simple gesture has this almost gentle shockwave through this small community that really upturns. You know, it doesn't fix a community, but it overturns the some of its greatest ills and the ideas that you know have caused it to stagnate. As I say, I was thinking of Dirty Dancing in that sense that, of course, that was an 80s film looking back at the 60s, whereas Chocolat is a 2000s film looking back at the 50s. And there is, like I say, a certain parallel there where, or at least, as I was discussing Dirty Dancing, it very much was about how the 60s represented the, you know, 63 is the point in which the decade's defining traits start to take hold, and of course that was that sort of hip, swinging 60s style, and again like the idea of getting rid of these old preconceptions. Whereas this film, of course, is entrenched in the 50s, and specifically in a gentle rural town. And so it's not about overturning everything and you know, showing up the generations, because the characters we look at are all contemporaries, and it's much more about people just simply saying, someone coming in and just going, this needs, you know, there are things here that I think I can help with. You know, she comes in very much in that model of a character who's a drifter, who comes in simply to fix some problems that she thinks she can help out with. And it has this wonderfully delicate sensibility to it. It's not supposed to be this aggressive challenge to the system. You know, it's not the idea that she comes in and looks at Alfred Molina's character, the mayor, or sort of the church or the establishment, and goes, I need to overturn this. she simply wants to help people on a, on a personal level. An abused wife, an elderly, isolated woman. Later a community of drifters who simply want to find some compassion from the locals. And I think there's a real sweetness to that, excuse the pun. It's so nice and gentle, and yet, as I say, there is that quiet revolution in it. There is that sense that, it slowly has a domino effect, that we see people's ideals change. And a culture shifts, not through, burning everything down, but simply by people changing their minds about ideas and what their expectations of people and their expectations of themselves. And I do think this is a really sweet film in that respect. It's it's interesting to see, I suppose, am I right in saying he's Swedish?
Yes.
A Swedish director making a French set and at least semi-cast film with, like I say, part French actors, part American, part British, but made sort of predominantly for a American audience. And yet there is something about it that's really at its heart it's adapted from Juliet Harris's novel, and so obviously it has Joanna Harris's novel, and so obviously it has a rooting to it, a core text, and yet, even in its visual style, there's something very French about it, and in the text of the script and the way it's performed. Juliette Binoche really does give this great leading performance where it's all about ways that she sort of considers things, the ways that she knows how to deal with people differently. She knows the ways in which she knows how to dig her heels in when she needs to, and when she needs to slightly adapt to different scenarios. And I think that sort of micro emotions that she sort of conveys are really strong. And of course, it has got a great cast. I mean, Judi Dench is just phenomenal. I mean, no surprise, Judi Dench is phenomenal in everything. But again, I would almost have believed that she was a French actress coming into this film, because there's something so, not just sort of because she's putting on an accent and she's sort of playing a much older woman than she is, but there's just something about her that's very French in her mannerisms and the way that she is. And yeah, and of course you've got Johnny Depp, who of course plays this mutual drifter, who our lead connects with and really develops, say, a kinship to. And yet he's a bit intriguing, of course, because he's the only person that she can't immediately find the perfect chocolate for. And it does use chocolate in a very sexy way. There's something about it where, this film doesn't want to overtly talk about sex and, like I say, sort of sexual revolution and stuff and sort of those sorts of ideas in a text way. So it uses chocolate in such a sexy way. It's it's remarkable, because it all symbolises that sense of repression, and the indulgence of chocolate is the freedom from repression. And I think that's very clever. And like I say, there is again something very, at its core, very French about it. But saying that, there is something to be said about the idea of these sort of small village ecosystems that exist, whether it's in France, whether it's in the Midwest, whether it's in rural Britain, in like Yorkshire or Devon. The idea of these places that get stuck in their ways, that don't know how to move forward and sort of adjust and adapt, and it takes just a little push from a forward-thinking person who comes in and upsets that ecosystem just a little bit, and I think that people really can relate to that, regardless of it being French or not. So I do think this is a really, really nice gentle, wonderful character-filled story, and I'm really glad I watched it. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Please hit the like button, comment on the video, and share the video because those all help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell. Do go through my long back catalogue of videos and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about movies and TV shows, and I share these videos as they go up on Twitter. Thank you for joining me. Take care.